Hello, thank you for joining the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs for our Wednesday webinar. Today we'll be talking about parental controls, just some of the different things you can do on your devices to kind of monitor and regulate how your children might be using some of your devices and their screen time and the content that they're able to view. So we'll get into some of those in just a moment. I'm Scott Cook. I'm the Communications Director here at the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs, and I get directed to the topic on hand today. That's parental controls. And of course, there's specific functions that can vary depending on the service and the device. And it can get a little bit confusing, frustrating, and time consuming going through some of those. So hopefully this presentation will help you out, kind of sort some of that out. And we encourage parents to kind of look at all the options that are available, not only for the apps that you're using, but you also want to go into all those streaming platforms, video game systems, and devices, and just kind of figure out what those settings are and kind of what best meets your family's needs. So we'll kind of walk you through some of the things you might want to consider and some of the common features of some of the parental controls that are out there is, of course, managing how much time is spent on a platform. So if you only want your child to spend so much time, maybe on YouTube or a social media service, anything like that, and you can kind of go through those and you can set those time restrictions on there. And some of them will even let you do it, for different restrictions for weekdays versus weekends and things like that. So you can kind of take a look at each app and which platforms they're using and kind of set those time limits for each one of those. And then, of course, you can always filter content based on age ratings. And we will kind of show you a few links a little bit later on about age ratings on some of the apps and video games and things like that. But, depending on how old your child is, you'll be able to kind of filter those contents based on those child's age and those ratings. And a lot of apps will let you kind of set those things depending on different age variations. So as your child gets older, you might want to kind of revisit some of those filters and kind of change those as well and kind of base them on some of those different rating systems that are out there. And you can also, of course, manage or monitor who that child can communicate with. So a lot of the apps and services, and we'll show you some of those in just a little bit, but they'll let you go in, kind of change who people can communicate with. So if there's, obviously you may only want them to communicate with people that are already programmed in that phone as contacts. So you can kind of go in there and set all those communication limits individually on there. And you can, of course, restrict purchases in app downloads, and that will kind of help you monitor what services the child is able to use as well. And then, of course, you'll be able to track info about websites and apps that are used. And many of the services will actually allow you to monitor the device's location. So that way, if your child loses their device, you're able to kind of find that quickly, at least know where it is. Maybe they've left it in the car, or the school bus, whatever the case may be. But a lot of the family settings on these devices will allow you to kind of go in, monitor where that device is, and maybe set up even different alerts where if a device goes past a certain, radius from their home or school, something like that, you may get a text message, something like that. So all these features are pretty common, and there might be things that you want to take a look at. And of course, things to consider here, some just different areas, and especially if you're paying maybe for a service that does family monitoring, things like that, you kind of want to look at the different things that are available. But one thing to just kind of consider, you want to look at those filterable topics. So of course, if there's certain things that you don't want your child looking up on the internet or whatever the case may be, those filters will allow you to kind of sort out those different things that they may be searching for and allow you to kind of stop certain searches to take place. And of course, there may be different filter levels for different age groups. So as a child gets older, you might be able to kind of adjust some of those settings based on that age and those recommendations for those ages as well. And of course, as a child gets older, proven to be a little bit more responsible, you can kind of change those filter levels and adjust for that. And kind of one thing too, you might want to consider just a few workarounds. We all know kids are smart, especially when it comes to digital devices. And if there's kind of a way to figure out how to get around something, they'll kind of figure that out. So you may want to look at different reviews, different things that are out there online, to kind of just search around, especially if you're paying for a product, search for those reviews and things like that, see what other parents have maybe experienced with that app or that device. whatever the case may be, and just kind of find out if there's different workarounds that children have figured out. And if so, just kind of figure out what those other parents that are posting about those things, kind of what those workarounds have been and how you might be able to kind of guardrail against some of those. And of course, if you're paying for a service, you probably don't want to pay for one that has a lot of different gaps that children are being able to figure out how to get around. So that might be one thing to consider as you're paying for a service or not. And most of the stuff that we're going to show you here in a little bit will be free, things that you can do to kind of take advantage of that. So I'm not necessarily encouraging you to pay for a service or not, but one of the things to consider would be those few workarounds. And a lot of different apps and devices that are out there will allow you to set up those parental alerts. So you might be able to get push notifications or text messages that kind of tell you about that child's actions. So if they're trying to get onto websites or searching for things that you've set it up not to allow them to search, you might be able to get a text message that will kind of tell you that that's the case and that your child's doing those actions that you've already set up to kind of guard against. So that might be one thing that you want to look at and set up those alerts if that's helpful for you. And when it comes to best practices with parental controls, kind of the experts for all this kind of say you want to go into each phone, each device, whatever the case might be, and check all those settings for that. But as you're doing that, you also want to go into each app as well. So I know that's kind of that time-consuming part there that I was mentioning a little bit, but it is kind of recommended that you not only go into the device and check all those settings, but you also want to go into each one of those apps that are set up and kind of look at all those settings through there as well. And of course, we know sometimes the Azure installing apps, the defaults may be set up differently, but it's always kind of a good best practice to kind of check all of those things as well. And I do encourage you to download the slides for today. And again, we'll have them in that little chat button there that you have in the Zoom presentation, but we've got a lot of different little links that may be very helpful for you. And I've got links here on this slide for Apple and Android, and it's going to kind of give you some of those walkthroughs that would be helpful to kind of get you looking at the features that are available. And of course, they've got different settings for parental controls and permissions, and a lot of them you can do remotely, so the parent can go in on their device and change those settings on the child's device and apps from that. So that would be very helpful for you. And I'm just going to click on these real quick just to give you a quick look at that. And so we'll do some walkthroughs here in just a moment, but I do want to just kind of show you the Apple and the Android kind of website links, and we've used that a good bit for the presentation for the walkthrough. So, they're going to kind of give you a lot of steps to take. So these are very helpful links to do, and I would encourage you to kind of go through both of these or, whichever one's applicable to your devices. And I know a lot of times we kind of have multiple devices and different types of setups as well. So you may have an Apple phone, but then have an Android tablet or something like that. So, it might be helpful for you to have both of these, but they will kind of give you those walkthroughs. And that was the Apple kind of website that I just showed there. And again, the Google site's going to be very similar, and it's going to kind of give you a big walkthrough for that. And it's got a lot of good images that are going to show you kind of how to secure all that information. And I'll just kind of encourage you to click on those links and kind of look at that, once the presentation is over, and it'd be very useful for you. But as I just said, I do want to kind of give you a quick walkthrough of some of these, and I'm going to start with the Apple here in just a second on the next couple of slides, and then we'll kind of get into Google in just a second. But, that link that I just showed you a second ago on the Apple, it's going to give you a good walkthrough on setting up that family sharing. That will be very useful for you. And then you kind of want to go in and turn on content and privacy restrictions. And once you've done that, you also want to kind of go in, set up and manage all those controls for that child's device. And then you want to make sure that it's set so that child's not able to go in and change those settings and those features on their own. So, again, do kind of encourage you to go into that Apple link and take a look at that. And I'm going to give you kind of that quick walkthrough of what it looks like on couple of my phones. I've got a work phone and a personal phone, so I want to kind of show you it's a little bit of a combination because I've got some of my restrictions turned on my work phone, obviously, for our state employees. So, we're going to give you kind of that quick walkthrough. So the first thing you want to do is kind of go into that settings button. It should have that little cog on it. and you'll see settings, of course, written on there. And you can also use that little search function that's probably at the bottom or top of your phone to look for all of that as well. But once you've done that, go into the settings and then you'll see your name and probably see some kind of family setup if you've already set that up. I've got the information blurred on mine just because that's my personal phone. I don't want my images of my family members on there, but we kind of use that function as well so we can all kind of set up some of those alerts for each other and things like that and track locations and all that type of stuff. So we'll kind of give you a quick little walkthrough on some of these settings that may be helpful for you as you go through. But if you scroll down a little bit on that settings screen, you'll be able to see screen time, and that's going to give you a good bit of information there. And that's kind of the best place to start, and is going to help you make a couple of different adjustments that will be helpful. And on that screen time page, of course, you'll be able to set all those limits for apps or choose apps that you may want to allow at all times. You may look at it and have some apps that are used for school or something like that that are, of course, something that you want the child to be able to use all day long while they're either, working on homework or whatever the case may be. So that might be something you want to change different times for those types of things. And then set some of those video or game apps, things like that, to be only functionable at night or something like that, during those set times that or device time, whatever the case may be with your family and the rules that you guys have set up. And also, you kind of want to take a look at this little place that I've got here, kind of with that arrow that goes to those restrictions. So that's going to go to the content and privacy restrictions, and we'll kind of give you a quick look at that as well. So this is kind of that screen that shows up when I've got it on my work phone, and it comes up where I can set those age restrictions for that. So, if you say Scott's 17 or younger, you can then kind of go in there and set up all those different safety features and things like that that are appropriate for whatever the age may be. And that might be something that's very helpful for you. And then, of course, on that content and privacy restrictions page, I've got all the features kind of turned off at the moment on my device, but you can kind of go in to each one of those. So you may only want to take a look at purchases, what apps are allowed, locations, contacts, all that stuff that you see there on the screen. Then you can kind of go in and make all those adjustments based on whatever the situation is for that child. And of course, the App Store will also kind of give you some of that info as well. So if you go into the App Store media, web, and game settings, it's going to allow you to kind of set all those different content restrictions for all those media services that are available. And if you want to maybe set the music to a different age restriction, you can do that. Or if you only want them to be able to watch PG movies, whatever the case may be, even with TV shows, you can kind of set those with that as well. So you can kind of go into all those individual settings for all those different things and set all those restrictions that may be applicable to your child. And like I said, you may even want to kind of go in through that as they get a little bit older and say, hey, you've proven to be trustworthy with this, and then you can kind of change those settings as they get older to, kind of what their new age is and how those limits might be useful. And of course, Google and Android devices are going to work fairly similar to that. The family link here, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of click that real quick here in a second, but that's going to give you a walkthrough of just kind of how Google works, and it's going to give you a lot of controls for Chrome, Google Play, YouTube, and search. So you can kind of use that system to go in, set up screen time, manage security, privacy settings, and require all those approvals for new apps, things like that the parent may want to do. And I'll kind of give you a quick look for this. And it is kind of worth saying too, that Family Link app does work if you have an Apple device. So if you have an Apple device and you're using a lot of Google functions, that might be something that's useful for you. So you can kind of go into that, and that will be useful. But again, download these links, and that slide will help you with that. So I'm going to click on the Family Link thing here just to kind of give you a quick walkthrough, but it's got a lot of good pictures and kind of giving you those walkthroughs that you might want to set up, and it's going to kind of show you how to set up the app limits and all that too. So I will kind of do a quick walkthrough with some of this, but I encourage you, if you're using a lot of Google devices or a lot of Google services, that's a good link to go through, and you might want to consider downloading that app even as well, even if you have an Apple device. So we'll kind of walk you through some of that really quickly and kind of show you what that looks for. And kind of the first startup screen is going to have this. So it's just going to ask you that simple question. Does your child have a Google account? And if you've clicked yes, it's going to give you this screen, kind of walk you through that and kind of get you that set up. So you're going to have to go into your settings and then get those devices together. But then again, like I said, it's got all that walkthrough that's going to kind of show you step by step how to get into those parental controls. And it's going to kind of walk you through some of that setup. And if you've clicked no on that screen, it's going to then give you those steps for creating that Google account that's specifically for your child. And so you'll need to create that new email address and all of that information there. So it's going to ask you a lot of information about your child there. So again, this is going to give you that quick walkthrough and they'll be fairly easy to set up. And once you've got everything kind of set up, depending on if you have that Google account already created or not, it's going to give you a screen that's fairly similar to this. They've kind of blurred out some of the little settings with that, but the big thing that you want to look for is that screen time function. And then you're going to be able to kind of go into it and set all those individual app time limits and things like that. So that would be a good starting point on that is that screen time button. And then once you kind of gone through that, you can also go into the controls button that's going to be at the very bottom of the screen. And it's going to give you information on all the services like Chrome, Play, YouTube, and Search. So then you can kind of go in, block inappropriate sites, maybe require approval for new apps and manage all those permissions. And then it's also going to be that button that you go into to manage contacts and maybe call, text settings. So if there's certain people that you want to restrict on that, you can go in, manage all of that through that controls button there at the bottom of the screen. And then, of course, location is pretty self-explanatory. It's going to let you set all those settings for that. And it'll even let you find where your child's device is on a map. And it might even send you alerts if they leave certain locations. So you can kind of go into that and figure out the settings that you want with your child and take a look at those in that location button at the bottom of the screen. Again, that's that Google setup there with that. So one of the things that we kind of encourage with all of this is you just kind of want to talk to your kids about all the settings. So as you're walking through, those plans and setting up all those different settings, maybe have those conversations with them then. And all the experts kind of recommend having those conversations as soon as the child begins using a device. You just want to help them understand kind of why you're setting all of those settings the way you are. And then maybe just having those discussions about why you're doing it. And of course, the easier it is, the earlier on. So if you're doing that immediately as they begin using the device, you've been having those conversations for a long time. And you may also want to just kind of use some of these everyday opportunities to have those discussions. So some of the examples we have here, maybe if you're seeing somebody texting while driving, hopefully you're not doing that. But if you see somebody on the road who's, using their device while they're on driving, you might want to have those types of conversations while you're seeing those in everyday use. And of course, cyberbullying might be one of those conversations you want to have as well. And then screen time. And I say screen time because, that impacts all of us. It's not just children that need to have that conversation. So sometimes, so of course, you can have it about yourself as well. So as you realize you're using your phone or device, whatever, throughout the evening, you kind of have those conversations about your own use and kind of lead the discussion that way. So that might be one of those opportunities to help kind of have those conversations. And of course, you always want to keep those communications open. And then the experts say you kind of want to communicate what you are expecting and you want to be very specific about it. And then they also kind of recommend you be patient. So of course, we all need to hear information over and over and over in order to learn it. And that's kind of why a lot of our presentations even are set up that way, where we repeat, some of the same things every week, because sometimes we just need to hear details multiple times before it really sticks in. And of course, children are especially built that way, and they need to hear that information over and over and over in order to learn it. But just kind of, again, one of the things to keep in mind is be patient and realize that kids are going to find ways to get around a lot of this stuff, and they may turn things off or change those settings that you've set in there. So you just kind of need to be prepared to talk with them about those times and about breaking the rules and maybe what those consequences are. But again, if you're communicating those expectations and being specific, they kind of know what happens when they break the rules and know what would kind of be that consequence in that. But, also just kind of be patient with that. And of course, we all kind of probably get ahead of ourselves with screen time and don't follow our own rules with that sometimes as well. Because if you're like me, there are days where I know I use a lot more screen time than I intend to. So that's one that we all can probably work on a little bit. But also, as we get kind of going into some of the protecting ourselves, it's just kind of a good reminder for adults and younger people as well, just to kind of keep in mind what we're posting online and kind of protect ourselves and just kind of share with care, right? So you want to think about what you're posting online, especially if it's talking about somebody else, maybe, because you just don't really know what that post may reveal, what they're comfortable with sharing online. And sometimes what we post on our own social media and things like that might impact other people. So of course, just kind of think about that as you're posting. And, one good thing might be just to ask another person if you're posting about somebody else, just kind of ask them if they're comfortable with it before you post too. That's always a good practice as well. But just kind of keep in mind too that identity thieves, scam artists kind of use that information sometimes that we use that we post online. They're using it to try to either guess passwords, security questions, maybe steal our information, anything like that. Sometimes they're just using those details to kind of target us with scams later on down the road. So if you're posting about one topic all the time, those scam artists sometimes use that information to kind of target you with a scam that maybe uses some of those details. So, always kind of go into those privacy settings. I encourage folks to kind of limit those social medias to be private and keep only people that you've approved and people that you probably know in real life to be able to follow you on social media. That would kind of be the best practice with that. And I know a lot of times uh, we all kind of have people who we may not necessarily know who we allow to follow us online. But just kind of keep that in mind as well. And I do want to just mention video games on here because a lot of video game systems do have a lot of those controls where people that you maybe don't know are kind of involved in that game and able to chat with folks as well. So just kind of keep that in mind. A lot of those video game settings or systems do offer parental controls, time limits, there's chat restrictions. So, somebody that they're playing a game with may or may not be able to chat with them depending on what the settings that you've set up with that are. So that's just kind of something to keep in mind depending on what the game is, what the gaming system is. So just kind of make sure you're aware of all those things. You might also want to check out the ratings with the Entertainment Software Rating Board, and that's the group that sets up a lot of the different ratings for video games and apps and things like that. So you may just want to kind of take a look at those ratings for each game that your child may be using, and of course, read those online reviews. And you might even want to watch videos online of the game. So figure out kind of what those things are, and of course, see what other parents may be saying about those games. And that's where those reviews might be able to help you out and kind of figure out if it's age appropriate or not just age appropriate. Sometimes, you know how your child will react and interact with people probably. So, just kind of knowing what that game is all about will kind of help you know how appropriate or inappropriate it may be for your child. Again, it's just kind of information that may be very helpful. And of course, we encourage folks to have those discussions with children too about just cybersecurity in general. And we have 4 tips that the FBI and folks from the cybersecurity of staysafeonline.org, they kind of recommend for folks to kind of keep in mind to stay safe with 4 simple steps here. And that first one is going to be kind of just thinking before you click, knowing, recognizing those signs of phishing. And of course, if something seems a little off, you may not want to click on those links because it may give you malware, maybe an attempt to get that sensitive information. So just kind of keep that in mind, but also have those discussions with your child as well. So as you're seeing those kind of phishing attempts, you might just want to kind of have that discussion of, hey, what do you think about this? Would you click it? And then kind of explain maybe why it's a little bit off, why it's a little bit dangerous, and that may be a kind of a learning situation that you can use to drive that conversation as well. But it's also a good reminder for us adults as well, because we know that these thieves are pretty tricky out there and they can all kind of come up with some good phishing attempts that trick even the best of us. So just kind of keep in mind, We would kind of encourage not to click any of those links that you get in an email, text message, anything like that. You always want to go to those tried, true, trusted sources before you go to a link. Just something to keep in mind as well. And of course, you always want to update your software. So not just your devices, but make sure all those apps and things like that are the most up to date, because a lot of times these updates are going to give you those kind of new security protections. So they're always kind of finding new flaws or different things that may not be working properly with the piece of software, or with the app, or with the device. So you want to make sure you've got those updates going on your devices, and you can always turn on those automatic updates. That's going to be kind of that free best way that you can make sure that all of your devices and all your software is up to date. And then, of course, use strong passwords. So, strong is long, right? So you make those passwords as long as you can. And sometimes that might mean needing a password manager to make sure that your passwords are long, they're unique, so you're not using the same ones over and over. We always tell people, you don't want to use the same password for Netflix that you're using for, your bank accounts and things like that. So that's going to give you that protection there. Again, password managers kind of help you out with keeping track of all those. You won't have to remember them. You just kind of remember that one big password to get into that password manager, and then it's going to encrypt all your passwords for you as well. And one of the new features that are out there are those pass keys. So that might be something you want to consider as well. And all that information is supposed to be encrypted multiple times, and it's going to kind of give you that additional protection as well with that. And we do have a webinar on our YouTube page that will kind of get into a lot of the password and pass keys, just kind of the functions with that. So you might want to consider taking a look at that webinar on our YouTube as well, if that's something you're interested in. And kind of our last step with cybersecurity is going to be enabling two-factor authentication or multi-factor authentication. So of course, that's the text message or maybe the alert. Sometimes here at work, we have the app on our phone where we get, once you try to sign in, you get the app that pops up and says, "Is this you?" on your phone. So that might be one of those ways that you do it. Other times you might get a text message, but kind of the important thing is setting up that second thing. So even if your passwords get hacked, there's that additional step that's required to get into that account or that device, whatever the case may be. And that's going to really protect you. The FBI says it's kind of that best thing that we can do to kind of double up our security factors with that. So I'd encourage you to set up two-factor authentication on any platform that you maybe not have set it up already. And again, it's going to kind of give you that additional protection and hopefully keep hackers out there. Even if they have your password, they're not going to be able to get into those accounts. And I do have a couple of different additional resources here for you. I hope you did enjoy or download the slides rather. Again, they're going to be in that chat section. So if you can click into that, that's going to give you a whole lot of information. Kind of the one I want to show you at the moment is this Heads Up, Stop, Think, Connect. And that's some information from the Federal Trade Commission. I'm going to click that real quick and just kind of show you this, but it's got a great deal of information that they've even got a little publication here that you can download or order copies of if you would like, but it's going to kind of give you a whole lot of information of things to keep in mind, maybe have conversations that you can have with your child. And again, they're kind of getting into some topics that we didn't really get into with cyberbullying and things like that, but it's got a whole lot of information, even different ways to protect privacy, things like that. So I'd really encourage you to at least take a look at that one. That again, it's the Heads Up, Stop, Think, Connect. That's on the FTC, Federal Trade Commission's website. And again, that link's going to be there in the slides for you. So if you download it from the chat section, that will be helpful for you. And we've also got some information on the South Carolina Department of Consumer Affairs under our website. And I've got the link here for this new parental controls page that we've set up. And again, it's going to kind of walk you through a lot of the things that we've talked about in the presentation about just kind of those common features to keep in mind and different things you can do with settings. And again, we've got a couple of different links in there. So depending on what type of device and what kind of service that you're using, hopefully it'll give you some of those direct links to go right into those settings and help you kind of make decisions about, your family and how they should be able to kind of use those devices and those services. So I'd encourage you to take a look at that. And all right, I do want to go ahead, and my slides aren't moving, but here we go. So now we're moving on it. If you need additional information, we do have a cybersecurity basics pamphlet on our website that you can go to consumer.sc.gov. You can either download it or you can request some of our publications for free. And we will put those in the mail, up to 50 for you or your community group. So if you're, church or Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, whatever the case may be, if you guys want our Ditch the Pitch, our scam prevention guide, or identity theft prevention guide, like I said, our cybersecurity information, we have those as well. So you can request those, and we're happy to ship those out to you. And we do that free of charge, and we can get those in the mail for you as soon as we can. And if you think you're a victim of identity theft or a scam, you can call our office. There's our number on the screen, 1-800-922-1594, and go to consumer.sc.gov, and we have those identity theft and scam report forms on our website. Again, I encourage you, if you've seen a lot of scams out there, you can download that form, shoot us that information, even if you didn't fall victim to that scam, and it just kind of helps us know what's going on out there and how scammers are trying to target our information these days. And I encourage you to follow us on social media just to help stay on top of different topics that are out there. And again, our YouTube page has got a lot of our webinars, a lot of other different videos, short videos as well, just on a variety of things that come up. Some of them are cybersecurity related. Some of them are even directed towards like credit reports, HOA laws, things like that. But we have a lot of information on our YouTube channel. I'd encourage you to follow us there, just kind of stay on top of those. And we have several webinars planned each Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. is when we do our webinars. And Guard Your Wallet on the Road is going to be our next one, May 20th. And that's going to be a lot of kind of travel information. So things that you might want to consider as you're doing your next vacation. There's some things that will help you kind of protect your information and protect your money from scammers that are out there and identity thieves. And we'll just kind of walk you through a lot of different things to keep in mind as you're planning your vacations here for Memorial Day and for the summer coming up ahead. And then on May 27th at 10:30 a.m., I'd encourage you to join us. Then we'll be talking about frauds and scams, how to stay safe. So a member from the FBI's Columbia office will be chatting with us about different things that they're seeing across our state. And there's different things to keep in mind, different tricks and things you might want to be aware of, and how you can protect yourself from those scammers and identity thieves that are out there. And I'm happy to answer any questions that may come up throughout the presentation. I know we kind of shot through some of that quickly, and I'm also going to just share my email and my phone number here for you too as well. So if something comes up, later on today, you will be able to kind of get some of those questions from me. And you can also reply to that public information email that is out there. If you get our webinar announcements and our email alerts, things like that, you can just reply to that public information email, and I get those, and I'll be happy to reply to those as well. Somebody asked about the recording, if it would be available. We're hoping to have it later today on YouTube. Worst case, if things come up and we get busy here in the office, it should be up tomorrow, but either later this afternoon or tomorrow, we will have it on YouTube. And again, SCDCA TV is that YouTube channel for us. So I appreciate you guys being interested in that. And again, if you didn't get the slides yet, they are available in the webinar chat. I know sometimes with folks, if you're using a phone or different device like that, tablet, sometimes it doesn't allow you, depending on the settings. And if you're using the app or using the web version, you may not be able to download those. But if you're not able to, just shoot me an email and I'm happy to send those over to you as well. And I'm going to give it one more second before we close off. And I hope that information was helpful for everybody today. And I hope you'll be able to join us, again on one of our upcoming webinars every Wednesday at 10:30 a.m. And I thank you guys for being with us, and I hope to see you again soon. Thanks.